Welcome again to the Patriot Ledger Editorial Board.
Thank you.
As you may recall, we are on the record. We are doing both audio and videotaping for our website, and Christian will be reporting out any news that may come out of our
I better be cautious.
Conversation.
I know this guy.
I hope so.
Yes, yes.
So we're happy to hear any opening remarks you might have, or if you'd rather, we can just jump in. Totally up to you.
We can basically just jump in. I made it pretty clear that I'm looking for 4 more years. I felt that my first term was stabilizing. It was really a stabilization. I think when I very first took office, it's interesting with this form of government, when you take office and you go in January, you're halfway through the budget season. Now, I had the opportunity as a counselor to be part of that budget anyway, but we weren't part of the 9C cuts that followed. So right after I took office, we were only dealing with about $180,000 of free cash, and then the major cuts came, severe. And what we were trying to do is hold on to as many jobs as we could and provide at least a minimal level of service. And then we thought that was going to be the bad time, and went into '09, and it was worse. So I think we did a very good job. I know we did a very good job at stabilizing. What we did was we did not hire where there were vacancies. And we found by doing that and freezing expenditures, things of that nature, that we were able to save jobs. And that was what it was all about. We held on. It was very disappointing and discouraging with poor unions who had to take zeros. And I said to them, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to save your job. And so we're going to be asking you to take zeros. You're not going to be happy about that, but you will have a job. And I want to admit that, you know, what's interesting about that is at that time, it really hadn't hit the South Shore of New England that badly. You know, it was getting down the south. And I said, you don't know, the next year is going to be horrific. It really is. So I'm glad they held on. We went to arbitration with one unit, and it was very interesting that the arbiter came back and actually did award zeros. I think it was the first time in Massachusetts, but it was the state of the economy, and I think everyone knew. And for the 3rd year, they did come in with some monies, and we did that and had to lay off because of those raises. So it's been interesting. I've learned. I've had to be patient, and I think that makes you a better statesperson. So I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. Maybe not a lot of growth, but even minimal growth is a positive thing, and I'm hoping to be part of that.
Do you see a need for a sacrifice next year as you go forward with the budget proceedings?
Right now, I'm looking for, we were able to level service rather than level fund into this fiscal year, and that was a big plus. Unfortunately, it put us back to '08 levels, but still then it wasn't putting us back to '06. So that being said, I believe we can get some capital expenditures going moving forward. I'd like to bring back some staff, especially in the DPW areas. We are critically looking for centralized maintenance of all of the towns on the South Shore. Weymouth's maintenance programs are very fragmented. When you consider our park department is 3 people, and they basically work on programs, no equipment, no maintenance people at all. You go into DPW, and DPW has not only roads, trees, parks, they have it all. And yet, there's where we've been cutting, or at least, you know, holding back. We don't have an enterprise fund such as having a golf course, maybe like Braintree, so we don't have that kind of revenue to come in to stabilize a good centralized maintenance force. So that's my goal, because consider the mitigation money. It's going to be, we will receive upwards to $14 million total from the base over their build out. If they build out within the next 10 years, that's a good $14 million, which we have devoted to putting toward capital for infrastructure and recreation. I don't want to be putting millions of dollars into parks that I can't maintain. It's foolish, it's ridiculous, it's what we've done and tried to hold on to, and it just doesn't work. So what I want to do is to find a good core central maintenance, and that may cost some money. Consider that, I'm rambling, aren't I? Consider that we're just bringing on Emory, the Emory estate. Very, very exciting and a positive move for the town. We want to maintain it. We want to get some good marketing in there and do something very nice with it.
Well, I have a question about the centralized maintenance. Will that include school department as well?
Good, very good question, because my predecessor really tried to do it. In all fairness to him, he tried to do it, and he did it on a very low key basis, and it didn't work because of the departments being very territorial. editorial. School department have their own, and you know, they've been cut back also, so I can understand their hesitancy to go jump in, okay, you're gonna do more than we are, we're gonna do more than you do, and all of that. So
Sounds familiar if you
doesn't
ask
it?
me.
Well, it makes sense because, especially when you're cutting,
25 years
everybody's freaking
Looking
out
out.
about holding their own. And that didn't bode well with our TBW, so that wasn't the way to do it. I tried to pick up on it, and then when the crunch came, it was ridiculous. Because I was, how do you cut staff and say do more maintenance? It just doesn't happen. In fact, I received an email, I was crushed. Because most of the emails I receive are pretty positive and people are supportive. And it was a woman who said, since you've been in, we have seen the streets aren't as good looking and the parks don't look as good. And I wrote it back and I said, you're absolutely right. Since I've been in, and I told her what we had to do. I said, that's what I want to work on. You're right. That's the area that I feel that we have been most negligent in. It's because of reasons, and we had our priorities, but that's what we have to work on. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's a huge goal of mine.
And is maintenance, oh, gotcha.
I still want to understand, is your plan to integrate the school department or not?
I imagine that will have to take place in some fashion. I don't want to just throw them together and say, now you're on maintenance. I want to look at it. I want to look at Braintree and what's successful there. I want to look at Quincy. Quincy has a fabulous maintenance program. I want to look at all the surrounding towns. What are they doing correctly?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm gonna do a comparison. So no, I'm not gonna just stick them together. It doesn't work. We've tried it.
Is it an area that might lend itself kind of like with trash removal to coordinating with the towns around you?
Absolutely, and we have, as you know, worked very well with the other two mayors, and they've been very cooperative and come talk to our people, what can we help you with? And we do a little bit of cooperation right now, such as if we run out of sand or salt, we work together. If our, I call it the sucking hose, whatever that thing is that cuts out sewerage, if ours is down, we can borrow and vice versa through the other towns. So we do work cooperatively in those efforts, but not full scale. So yes, I think there's room for that, and I hopefully they'll be open to it. The only difference in Braintree is they do have that enterprise fund for the golf course. So that kind of money in, money out, that has to rotate, and that kind of gives them a good setback. And I know that Quincy has a fabulous program, so I may be mimicking portions of everybody's. But I'm certainly open to regionalization.
I actually didn't know Quincy had centralized maintenance. I don't believe it.
You know, I'm not quite sure. Whatever it is, it's successful. I really haven't delved into it. I know
Okay.
that their park, rec, street people are very good.
Well, why do you think that is with the mayor being who he is?
Well, exactly. And he knows what he needs.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I'm on the
sorry
other
to
side. I was
interrupt.
part of a youth group that beat them up for 20 years. And
Did you in
we-
the Coke Club, yeah?
Oh, no, actually in Weymouth, I was on the Weymouth Youth Soccer Board of Directors for 25
Okay.
years. And we used these fields and we would beat heck out of them. And then we would go up with hand mowers and we would mow them ourselves. We would line it ourselves. Well, they're probably putting about 20 grand into the fields. Right now, youth groups supplement the fields in Weymouth. And that's not right. People pay taxes. We ought to be able to at least help.
Okay, so goals for 4 more years would be a more efficient and effective maintenance
Yes.
of city buildings, lands.
Exactly, and that I guess would incorporate, it would have to really be separate when you consider that buildings it would be very separate. We have our issues with buildings in that we have not put any capital dollars to our infrastructure in many years. That I believe is going to take on a life of its own, and I have vowed to set aside money in the budget for capital, whether it's 500,000, 700,000, there will be something spent on capital infrastructure every year for the next 4 years if I get elected. And that's critical. I don't think I want to mess with the grounds, mesh that together, because that's building inspection, and I'm hoping to beef up that department so that they will be, let's say, the head of the crew that will go in and take care of those capital, say, planning the bids going out, procurement, things of that nature. I would like to kind of keep that separate. That's why, and in doing that, those people won't have to worry about, okay, what's happening on Middle Street, things of that nature. They can get the procurement done, handed over to then the street, park, and tree people. So I want to beef up capital expenditures. We haven't put $1 towards sidewalks outside of if we're doing a whole street. it's gotta be 30 years. Dave, do you remember we used to have a sidewalk committee?
Sidewalk committee.
And what they would do, and they were very helpful, and they were from all parts of town, and they would get together and they would prioritize. Well, there's no prioritizing now. I think every one of our sidewalks, unless it's a brand new street setup, are in horrible condition, horrible.
I think the last sidewalks we put in were under the former government on
The old farm
On
government,
the,
definitely.
on Park Avenue down from the new fairgrounds to Route 18.
I wouldn't doubt it. Long, long time. So we need to look at that. I'd like to prioritize the street acceptances also. The more streets you accept, the more Chapter 90 monies you receive. We haven't done that because, quite frankly, it costs you about $3,000 to $4,000 to accept a street by the time you do all of the background work.
Do you have a lot of privately
We do.
managed streets in
I
town
don't know
still?
why, but we do.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting
I
little
know.
sidelight.
You know, what's also interesting about it is we had a street where a couple of the residents on the street is relatively small and it kind of abuts the base. And there were a couple of neighbors said, well, you can't even get up and down our street, it's terrible. So I went down to take a look at it, and it was just like this. Pasture Street down
Oh,
there.
down on
that abuts
Union
yeah,
Street.
where Van Heffernan lives.
Yeah.
And I said, this is just terrible. So I said, okay, to accept this street, we have to go around and talk to all of the neighbors. There was a resident who didn't want that street paved. I said, look at it, it's terrible, you can't even drive. I like it that way, the kids don't come down here, I want it private, forget it. Because that one neighbor, we couldn't do it.
Wow.
Now, if you could prove that it was so dangerous as to,
Fire
you know,
and
hurt
police
the
couldn't get
welfare,
there. Yeah.
exactly. But, you know, you hate to push that. She
Well,
has her
I'm-
rights.
I'm interested. So you're telling me that in situations like storms, hurricanes, heavy snowfall, town plows don't plow those streets?
No, they do.
You do?
They do.
Even unaccepted streets, you're here for the health and welfare of your residents.
Mhm.
And whether the
Okay.
street's accepted or not, we pick up trash, we plow, we do.
So-
We can't do anything like maybe add a light or any kind of heavy-duty paving, because that, to the right, the people who live on the left-hand side and own the street from the middle of the street to the left, and the people on the right-hand side, isn't that odd? Own the street from the middle. I know, I had quite an education on all
So
of
do
this.
they get municipal services,
They do.
but they don't pay for them? Or
Town.
it's part of their,
Well, they pay for them in their taxes.
and their taxes
The only
anyway?
difference is that it's a private street. So if they wanted to add a light or to do something themselves in the street, they'd have to pay for it.
They could put like a center island in if they want, they wouldn't have to ask you for anything.
Nope.
Plant a tree, knock down a tree, whatever it is,
Yep.
it's their business.
Other than we wouldn't want our engineers to make sure that it wasn't to the detriment of
And do
anything.
these have municipal sewerage or water
We do.
services?
Yes, oh yeah.
So
It's
they have
exclusive
to
of
allow
that.
you to go in.
Easements. We would have
You
a
have your
sewer,
easements.
water easement, absolutely.
This is,
Isn't
it's
that
just one of
interesting?
those quirks of old time.
It
There's
is
one
the
here in
strangest
Quincy.
thing.
There was one
There
here in
is
Quincy
one
when I was born
somewhere.
and brought up in
Yeah.
Squantum. And there was a
That's
street
an old
by the name of
section.
Cross Street that ran across from, I don't know.
Across
Brunswick-
something, right?
Brunswick all the way over to Babers. And it was never paved or anything, and it was a private way. All the homeowners on the side, on that road owned half the road, and it was never paved.
So if they call you and say, hey, my road's a
Driveway.
mess, it's your road.
Mm.
You have to, there's a process you go through to have it
Yeah.
accepted. And if somebody on that road doesn't want it accepted, that's an issue.
And is it more often the case than not that you want to accept these roads?
We want to accept it because it adds our mileage to the Chapter 90 pool. We want to make sure we take a look at it because to accept it means to fix it.
Mm.
So if we've got something, such as that road that was all rocky and bumpy and stuff, we accept that. We own it, we fix it.
Mhm. With the hope that the money you get by taking the road out
Exactly. And it
offsets the
probably
cost to
would,
fix it.
sure.
Mhm.
Okay, so capital expenditures like sidewalks, some streets, and/or buildings?
Infrastructure, yes, we, and Christian can attest to this, had been going to council for roofs. Can you imagine I had a roof that the membrane was held down with tires? Absolutely outrageous. Roofs of schools, where we had 18
Was this a public
leaks.
building?
Yes.
That had a roof that was held down by tires?
But yes,
Wow.
thank God it happened to be a teen center that I could close down, unfortunately. The problem with this particular building, and it's an old building, used to be the old police station. In fact, to turn it into a teen center, I remember ripping off tile years and years ago. You probably down there
I was down
helping
there doing
out
the
too.
same thing.
The windows are in really bad shape. We have windows, we're gonna do them internally, but you don't wanna be putting windows in with a bad roof, you're gonna wreck those windows. So, what made me close the center down was the dangerous windows. I couldn't do the windows, so we boarded it up. I said, unless you give me, so it was having a hard time getting money through to council. I said, look, you're forcing me to close this teen center. So anyway, now we have it, we're fixing the roofs, which will allow us to put the windows in, and we'll do that all internally. So it'll be much more
Okay.
reasonable.